Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Happy Friday. Thank goodness. And welcome to a very sunny Friday morning as I look out my window here. Welcome to our Wake Up Naples for November. And this is actually our last Wake Up Naples for our year, the calendar year here. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But again, thank you all for joining us. Thanks for being a part of this morning. I'm Michael Dalby. I'm the president and CEO of the Chamber, and we are very glad to have you here. As we kick off today's event, we always want to welcome and thank our sponsors, our Wake Up Naples series sponsors. You can see them there on the screen. You know, as we thank these sponsors, we always want you to think of them in terms of if you're looking for some service or some help with your business, a contractor to help you out, please use these sponsors. They are helping us to be able to do this work. I also want to acknowledge our Chairman Circle investors, Collier Enterprises and Arthrex, obviously two of our largest investors, and we appreciate their support. We also want to recognize our legacy leaders, and you can see them on the slide here. That's a number of great businesses that really provide some underwriting support to us, again, to be able to do the work of the Chamber, our mission to cultivate economic opportunity and be the stewards of the economy here in our area. So thanks to all of them. And also want to recognize our benefactor investors as well. A lot of great businesses that are doing a lot of great work here in the area, and we appreciate all their support. Thanks to all the investors. They allow us to do this work. For today's event, our sponsor is TECO Peoples Gas. And since 1895, Peoples Gas has provided Florida residents and businesses with reliable, environmentally friendly, and economical natural gas products and services. At this time, I'd like to introduce Chris Lopez, who's the Southwest Florida Regional External Affairs Manager and a Chamber Board member, thank you very much, to tell us more about the TECO Peoples Gas. Chris?
Good morning, Naples Chamber, and thank you so much for allowing me to be here for such a great program with Mr. Peter Schorsch. We're looking forward to what's going to be Florida's political future in the years to come after such an epic election that has been unfolding over the week. And I don't want to take up too much of Peter's time, so all I will say is, along with what's going to happen with our political future, TECO Peoples Gas is going to be there to help fuel Florida's future, and we're very proud of that, and we're very excited for that and the innovation to come. So thank you for being here this morning, and we look forward to a great program and engagement from all of our attendees.
Thanks, Chris. Really appreciate that. Again, thanks for your support. Thanks for being on our board. Thanks for all that you do to help our economy to continue to push forward there. And again, I want to remind everybody that as all of our events, we'll be recording this so you can watch it later. And we know we have a number of people that have registered that plan on doing that, watching it later. And also, if you have a question, use the Q&A function. You can probably use the chat function too. We'll try to look at those and probably consolidate some of those questions and be able to address them as we go through here. So at this time, I am going to pass the mic over to Jenna Buzzacco-Foerster, who is the Chamber's Director of Government Relations, who will then kick off the program. So Jenna, thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Michael. I am thrilled today to introduce today's speaker, Peter Schorsch. Peter is the founder and publisher of FloridaPolitics.com and a suite of podcasts and newsletters, including Sunburn, the morning read of what's hot in Florida politics. And many of you probably got it in your inboxes this morning. He has a vast knowledge of Florida politics and government and has been around for a while. And just, you know, a point of privilege here, I'm lucky to call both him and his wife, Michelle, very dear friends. So welcome, Peter.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy that I didn't have to drive down at 7 for this. So thank you for that.
Well, we're happy to have you. And I think we're gonna just do this as a conversation. And so let's just dive right in. We are, I think right now, 36 hours after most polls in, all of the polls in Florida, and a good portion of the polls in the country have closed. Can you kind of give us a lay of the land right now? And maybe start at the top of the ticket. Where do we stand?
Okay. The first thing I wanted to start with was something that I read this morning. It was in The Hill, and it said that Americans lost an average of 25 minutes of sleep on election night. It's something like 137 million hours of sleep that the country lost. And I just want to know, who are the lucky bastards that only lost 25 minutes on election night, as opposed to the rest of us who were, I took a nap at 3 a.m. and then got back up and then powered through. I don't think John King or Steve Kornacki have slept in days either. And so it's been an interesting time.
Steve Kornacki's changed his clothes yet, though, either.
The Steve Kornacki pants. I don't even know if they are like a natural fiber. I think that they're like some sort of plastic that was invented for him specifically. But given the lay of the land, it was very interesting. About 4 a.m. this morning, my phone started buzzing with alerts from basically most of the news organizations that Joe Biden had caught up and surpassed Donald Trump in Georgia in terms of ballots being counted. And he's about 1,000 votes up right now. Georgia, like Florida, has a recount law that anything within 0.5% of the of each other, the losing candidate can call for a recount. And so the Associated Press and all the other news organizations are going to wait to call Georgia for Joe Biden. But with Georgia, that puts him at 269. If you give him Arizona, which I'm going to give him Arizona right now, only because the AP and Fox have called Arizona for Joe Biden. Although I would not be surprised if eventually Donald Trump catches up in Arizona. But I think that will be irrelevant because Nevada is still out. Nevada has 6 electoral votes. There's about 90,000 votes left in Nevada. If you're following Nevada politics, there's one person out there. His name is John Ralston. He's basically the me of Nevada, except he's owned by casino companies and I'm owned by other corporations. And so he says all of the vote is from Clark County, which is basically Las Vegas. And so there is, in fact, Nate Silver of 538 last night said, we should go ahead and call Nevada for Joe Biden. There's just really no path for the president. And so if that all happens, it's going to make Pennsylvania kind of the, I don't know, it's going to be I don't want to say it's the cheese on the steak at this point, but it's going to be the thing that probably it's going to be a very symbolic win for Joe Biden if he catches up there, which he's expected to do, because it will get him to about a 309, 310, basically a 100 electoral vote win. At that point, I think you will see some U.S. senators. You saw Pat Toomey this morning kind of say this. I think that there will be some long conversations with the president at that point about tramping it down. And then you will see Joe Biden speak at some point, probably today. And then you'll start to see media organizations use the term, and it's very important here, president-elect, because with that, you get Secret Service upgrades. You get, he's a former VP, so he gets a lot, but you get you get more national security briefings, et cetera. You get transition offices. And so once that president-elect title is attached, it's a big deal.
Florida went red, which I think some people were surprised by, some people weren't, depending on where you are, how much you pay attention. But I think, and like to hear what you think about this, was the margin in which it happened. Florida has been 1% or less the past couple of elections. So talk to me a little bit about what happened in Florida, both with the presidential and when we start looking at the state legislature.
Okay, so Florida did go red. And it was a surprise if you went by the public polls. Some of the public polling was as big as 7 or 8 for Joe Biden. I made sure, I did some Zoom panels and I made sure to record them or have them recorded. I was saying, Joe Biden, the public poll, all of the public polling that I liked had Joe Biden +2, so that meant Donald Trump by +1 or +2. He exceeded even that. I think the only people that really got it right were the Trafalgar Group, and then the Republican private polling got it right. And I wanted to save that for later on because I know you're going to ask about polling and the future of that. But if you talk to like Ryan Tyson of the Tyson Group, data targeting, they were spot on where they thought Joe Biden was going to be, or where Donald Trump was going to be. And then there was some big surprises in the legislature in terms of basically running up the score for an already strong Senate. You know, there was talk about the Democrats cutting the Republicans' advantage to 21-19, and that would have given this woman that I know dear to our hearts, Kathleen Passidomo, a lot of heartache because she's going to be so key to that redistricting process, and she would have to keep her majority in line the entire time to get anything passed. Well, that didn't happen. Gary Farmer shot the moon and lost. And now it's so bad that we are in a recount status in Senate District 37. So Jason Broder won in Senate District 9. Ana Maria Rodriguez won in Senate District 39. And now the Republicans are pushing for a win. They think that they've got a shot. They're ahead right now, knocking off Jose Javier Rodriguez. They were not able to defeat Loran Osley. That was another seat that was in up for grabs. But what they were able to do was get Gary Farmer to spend money to defend Loran Osley. And with that, those other battleground seats were much easier to win. So it was a great tactical move by Senator Simpson, Senator Passidomo, their consultants, et cetera. And then in the House, just when you think that the majority couldn't get bigger, Chris Sproul ends up netting 5 seats for the Republicans. They knocked off some incumbents like Jennifer Webb and Cindy Polo. They defended all of their vulnerable seats, like Jackie Toledo in Tampa Bay, Chip LaMarca in Broward County, Elizabeth Fetterhoff over on the other coast. And then they really dominated Miami-Dade. You know, that Donald Trump had really long coattails. And that's why we saw a couple of the congressional races go as well. But we also saw like House District 120 there, which is Key West. There was some talk that the Democrats were going to win there. So Chris Sproul goes in with the problem. And if you talk with like Richard Corcoran, I think he had 81 members. It almost becomes unwieldy. You know, there was actual talk of like legitimate talk about, I don't want to say allowing some members to lose, but it just becomes so big that you just can't control it. And so sometimes you want to like, you know, a controlled burn. I remember that term from Republican leadership the last time they were this far ahead.
And to that point, we have a question from the Q&A that we're gonna just hop in because it goes to what you just said. And it's from Howard Simon. And it's assuming that you believe Florida hasn't benefited from a one-party rule for the last 2 decades. What is your formula for rebuilding a competitive 2-party state? I
mean, I'm not going to reject the premise of it. All I'm going to say is who says we want a 2-party state? You know, like I think Florida is a center-right state. I think that Democrats, their main problem is that they don't recognize that, you know, that places like Naples and Collier County, you know, don't want the same big government solutions that we find in St. Petersburg or in South Florida. And so I do think, you know, think about all of the response to the pandemic, think about all the problems with the unemployment system, and still not one of these Republican incumbents in the House was turned out. So I think people are relatively happy with center-right form of government in Florida. And I think if you're a limited government Republican, you really got to like the idea of a Biden White House, Mitch McConnell Senate, Nancy Pelosi in the House, a conservative court, and then Florida and a Republican government in Florida. You know, if you watched yesterday, I think it was Barry Diller, the big tech magnate, he was saying, this is a great time. This could be a great time for business. This is divided, smart government. And this would be a great time. If you can't make money now, you don't know how to make money. But let me let me better answer that question. I think the question really is, how do we get Democrats more competitive? Well, you got to knock off the socialist crap. You just got to, and this started with Andrew Gillum when he could not answer definitively that he believed in capitalism. He didn't say yes to that when he was asked if he is a capitalist. That is just, forget about all the personal issues, forget about anything else. If he can't answer that question in, red meat America, you're not going to win seats. And that's why Cindy Polo is one of the state representatives that lost. She was the unofficial chair of the Socialist Caucus in the legislature. That stuff just doesn't play in Florida. I think another thing that Democrats are going to have to do, they've got to take all of these things out of the box. They've got to stop putting Latinos as one word and start looking at Latinos as, you have Cuban Americans in Miami with one set of concerns, and you got to look at Puerto Ricans in Osceola with a second set of concerns. And you got to look at Venezuelans who are escaping the Maduro regime as something else. And then West Tampa Hispanics as something else. I think that the Democrats played, they would get $500,000 from Michael Bloomberg to put out an ad in Spanish. And that just was not effective data-driven micro-targeting, which the Republicans, you got to give Rick Scott a lot of credit for saying, hey, I may not win the Latino vote in Florida, but I'm going to challenge Bill Nelson for 40 or 45% of it. And he did that. The man even learned Spanish to better communicate with all of those communities. And so I think that, it's very easy. Stop being a socialist, start respecting all the different cultures that are in the Latino community right now. And then, I could go on. The Democrats have so many problems that, it would be wake up Naples and let's have lunch Naples and then happy hour Naples and then late supper Naples. We could just go on and on.
Well, I'm sure we'd all love you to come down and do that. But let's talk a little bit about turnout. Collier County, down here in Collier, we saw 90% turnout. Turnout was big across the state and across the country. What do you think drove that turnout this year? And what were some of the surprises maybe when it comes to who was turning out and how they were voting?
As much as 90% is an insane number. And I think you hit 90% in Sumter County, which is where the villages are. And I'm just they're so surprised by this. And I'm like, you had old people locked up in their house for the last 6 months with 45 days to cast a ballot. What else does anybody have to do? You watch Netflix, then you go vote. You can't leave the house. So, if they mail you a ballot, eventually you're going to do something with that. So it's I think this pandemic, in a way, for one of the upsides of a pandemic is it didn't give us anything else to be distracted by. And so, hey, I'm going to participate. I'm going to read the direct mail. Direct mail, I forget the statistic that I saw on it, but direct mail was through the roof. If you thought you got a lot of direct mail before this cycle, they were sending, it used to be you would get one piece from a candidate per day. Candidates were sending multiple pieces arriving on the day. So you would have 4 pieces from Ana Maria Rodriguez or Jason Broder or the Republicans or whatever. And it was because we were a captive audience. We had nowhere to go. And so they were just mailing stuff to us. So we had this population that was ready to vote for it. But I think the key stats is, all right, so you had 90% in Collier, huge numbers in Lee, Sumter, et cetera. You only had 75% in Broward, in Palm Beach, et cetera. And so it's disappointing again that, the Democrats didn't turn out more of their vote. And that's a straight ground game question. And that's really the downside of the pandemic. And let me hit this really quick. Republicans made a choice. They said, you know what? We are still going to engage door to door with people. Joe Gruters, the chair, Christian Ziegler, the vice chair, they campaigned in 38 different counties. There was no Democrat ground game. They just said that they were just not going to campaign door to door during a pandemic. That may have been the smart move for their health, but it was the bad move for their political health.
Mm-hmm. I know that this morning you put out your big winners and losers list. Let's talk about some of them. Who, in your opinion, was the biggest winner in Florida this election cycle?
It's Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is in the catbird seat right now. He spoke at he was the last warm-up speaker for Donald Trump at 5 of his 6 last rallies. So he was Donald Trump's guy here. He won Florida for Donald Trump. He made sure, he's taking all of the credit for the smooth election process. Yesterday, he said it wasn't 20 years of changes since 2000. It was his appointment of Laurel Lee. And so smooth election that went out for Donald Trump. And now he doesn't have to deal with, if things continue the way that they look like they're continuing, he's not going to have to deal with, basically Donald Trump in his 3rd election cycle, which is historically bad for the people of the same party. When Ron DeSantis is up, Marco Rubio is up, they don't have to run against that trend. In fact, they get to run against whatever Joe Biden puts out there, whatever AOC and Nancy Pelosi try to push through there. And so, he's in the best of all worlds right now. The only thing he's really going to have to deal with is, what does he do when Trump moves down to Mar-a-Lago and he's only 200 miles away? It's kind of like, if you go to college over in Stanford, you're never going to have your parents show up. But if you go to college at UF, they can be there in an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm. What about the biggest loser? I'm guessing, I could guess who I think you're going to say, but who's the biggest loser of 2020 in Florida?
Barry Charmer. There's so many Democrats, and you have to, so you have to be nuanced about it. You have to, it's easy to say that the losers are losers, but who set themselves up to win and then lost? And I really think that that's the 2 sets of legislative leaders. I can make an argument, and I think you're going to see this argument out of the Biden team, that they pinned down Donald Trump in Florida, like Steve Shale and all those folks. I'm not going to call them losers. If they had Donald Trump in Miami the night before the election, in the Villages the week before the election, and not out in Nevada and Arizona, because it literally physically you couldn't get there. I mean, he's the president of the United States. It still takes a half day to go out there and come back. The president, I think, only made one westward trip in the last 2 weeks. They pinned him down in Florida. So I'm not going to call the Biden campaign the losers, even though they lost here. But I will say that the 2 sets of legislative leaders, obviously Farmer for what he did, which is, I think you have to look at that. He's basically been in charge of Senate operations for 2 cycles now, because Audrey Gibson, who was the last leader, basically handed it over to him. They went for 6 races there. They only won 1. And then they basically went for the 2 here. They lost both of those and are on the verge of losing a surprising 3rd. So Gary Farmer, when you think about it over a 2-cycle, process here, is 1 for 9. I mean, that's just, I don't know, if he was a Roman general, he would be making himself a warm bath at this time. And then on the other set of leaders, the Bobby DeBose and Evan Jennings in the House, they picked up 5 seats in the 2018 cycle. It was the only bright spot other than Nikki Fried for Democrats. So what did they do? Of course, as Democrats do, they fired the consultants who did that to put in their own people. So, and it's a friend of mine, Reggie Cardozo. He wins these races. He's an Obama White House alum. He had helped win Florida in 08 and 12. He builds out a program where they win 7 races, but they ended up losing 2 incumbents. So they netted 5, and they said, we're going to get rid of this guy. The only guy that wins, we're just going to fire that guy. So it's not just, Democrat ineptitude is not as obvious as it seems. It goes beyond that. It's deeper than that.
We talked just for a minute. It wasn't just candidates on the ballot this year in Florida. We had a bunch of constitutional amendments. So were there any surprises there? What was the biggest surprise when it came to the constitutional amendments? And what happens next, because as we've all seen with medical marijuana, just because you pass it doesn't mean it happens immediately.
Before I answer that, Jenna, I'd like to take a moment and thank Tico Energy for the gas that comes into my house, and what a great contribution that they make to the Tampa Bay area and all of Southwest Florida. Tico Energy. I'm going to start wearing shirts around the legislature like race car drivers.
Yeah.
And they're just going to have sponsors on them. They're just going to say like Ballard Partners right here, or, Florida Power and Light. I'm trying to come up with new revenue streams. I should have them for my Zoom screens, like my sponsors back there. That's actually not a bad idea. So the biggest surprise about the constitutional amendments is that a state that went 3.5% for Donald Trump went 60% on the raising the minimum wage. And so why did that happen? Well, if you look at the poorest counties in Florida, counties that don't have a big population, but are rural counties, Union County, basically all of the counties that are named after Confederate generals or were named during the Civil War, all of those counties are really our poorest counties. There's a lot of prisons there, and they're in the middle part of the state. They voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump and for the minimum wage. So that's the biggest reconciliation. That's the kind of John Morgan conundrum right now, is how, and what's really crappy about that is Democrats really didn't support that as much as they should. So like Nikki Fried is taking a lot of crap from John Morgan now for not backing Amendment 2 as staunchly as she should. So, that was probably the biggest surprise. I think the initiative to keep our Constitution clean, that lost. The idea of having what are called jungle primaries, where we elect the top 2 candidates out of the primary and they get to run regardless of party affiliation, that lost narrowly. That again is one of those, like, the good government people were on the verge of winning that. They were at 5% or at the 5-yard line, and they made a really bad tactical decision at the beginning of that campaign. They decided that they were only going to impact, the idea was to do 2 initiatives, one impacting state races, one impacting federal races, so that if people run for Congress, it would be top 2. For whatever reason, Mike Fernandez, who was the billionaire who was behind it, they decided they were only going to do state. And with that, the national money that was interested in doing the federal part, they left town. So there was no other financier except Mike Fernandez. And he just didn't put in enough money, honestly, to win it. He's a multi-billionaire, and he was putting in like $500,000 checks at a time, which is great, but it's his walking around money. On the initiative, let me just say one thing, which I think will be good news to the chamber, or any chamber. I don't think we're going to see many more initiatives in Florida. They've become so cost prohibitive. To get, collect all the signatures, go through that process. The legislature has made it where they can attach information around the initiatives on the ballot about the cost of it. The main guy who does initiatives, his name is John Sawinski. He's done work for sugar. He's done work for the casinos, et cetera, to try and get initiatives there. He's fought against casinos as part of No Casinos. He didn't have any initiatives even on this ballot. I don't know that he's working on any going forward. I think we're at the end of the initiative process in Florida at this point.
What happens, you briefly talked about minimum wage. It passed, raises it to $15 an hour gradually, but I imagine there's going to have to be some rulemaking. So what are you thinking is going to happen 2022? Legislative session starts in 3 months. Talk about that rulemaking process.
Oh my God, Jenna, please don't remind me of that. I just want to get to Thanksgiving. I really do. I want to get my tan back. I've been locked up watching this election. So, John Morgan will make the argument that there's no need for an implementing bill. Well, the legislature could, if it wanted to, could make the argument that there is a need for it, just like they did on Amendment 4. So far, Wilton Simpson, who we reported this yesterday, very interestingly, Wilton Simpson and the Senate campaign arm hired Morgan and Morgan to fight the recount or to work on the recount down in that Senate district we were talking about. Wilton Simpson also said he doesn't anticipate having to do it implementing bill. Chris Foles right now said kind of the same thing, but he wasn't as definitive. But if you talk to people, like I talked to Rob Bradley yesterday, and now that he's a private citizen, all he wants to do is chat. I'm like, where were you when, it was the appropriations process, when I wanted to find out how much, sprinkle money they were going to put in for any special project. But now he's texting all the time. And so he basically said he watched his wife's campaign. Jen Bradley replaced him in Senate District 5. And he said the thing that came up again and again was the minimum wage amendment in a positive way. And this is in Clay County, kind of the rural part of Northeast Florida. And he was just like, Republicans would be really wrong if they don't understand the economic populism that is espoused by Trump, that's in the party. If they mess with the amendment, with the minimum wage initiative, I get it. Like the Florida Chamber didn't like it. The restaurants didn't like it. But to be honest, also, like, I don't know, but I've seen a lot of big companies kind of like already like meet the minimum wage, like Target and Darden and all that stuff. And I'm not saying that it's great for everyone. And I know that there's opposition, and I know that it does hurt small businesses. It really does. But it seems like the big corporations, and those are going to be the folks that are funding the Chamber of Commerce, the statewide one. I think they're maybe on the fence already. Like, I think Disney's not, I don't know. I just don't feel like Disney's going to go to war over this in the idea of a pandemic. The other thing about this one was, and I think this is an impact of Parkland. If you remember, the Parkland shooting happened and Publix was donating money, and then all the kids came in and were dying on the grocery lanes and all that stuff. And Publix pulled back its money, and they just didn't want to. They didn't want to donate anymore, and they still donated, in 2020, and they basically fund the Florida Retail Federation. But one of the big issues with the Amendment 2 campaign was nobody wanted to be the big face of it. They didn't want, people know that Disney funds the chamber and other big companies fund the chamber, but they didn't really want to be out there like that. And so I feel like Republicans would do well to just let this one go through without mucking it up too much.
Yeah, we're talking about the future of Florida and what this election means. So without giving you too many nightmares, legislative session 2021, how does the results on Tuesday affect the 2021 legislative session? Should we be seeing different legislation coming, maybe pushes?
Well, it's interesting. I thought they were supposed to be up there this week doing anti-protest legislation, but that seems to have died off rather quickly, which is always very interesting. I don't see a lot of momentum right now. They basically said no committee meetings in December, so they're punting to January. And you see this when there's not a lot of committee meetings, there just isn't time to work bills up. Yeah, you can get leadership priorities through, but there isn't like time to get some of these surprises through, et cetera. I think they are looking at, the budget hole not being as incredibly horrible as they thought it was going to be. I think they want to kind of stay out of the way. I would imagine they're going to do as much deregulation, as much like freeing up businesses as they can. But I think that they've covered a lot of that already. Criminal justice reform is not going to go far with Chris Foles, son of a cop, former prosecutor. So I think any momentum you may have seen over the last couple of years, that might not be there. In a lot of ways, the Republicans under DeSantis really got a lot done over the last 2 years. I don't know if there's a lot, I don't know what DeSantis wants to do that, we have to get done. I will say, Jeff Brand, and this is probably very important to this audience, I think we're going to have to do something about property insurance. Like, that is the ticking time bomb for a lot of folks right now. I don't know what that answer is, but I believe you'll see some. I know, Brandis files a bill every 5 minutes during session, but I will say that property insurance is going to be a priority. AOB, the reforms went through in 2019. We're still sorting that out. If you listen to the insurance summit yesterday, I think they want to do some windshield glass legislation. I think that that's a big priority for the insurance companies. So I think we'll see something like that. And then, I think we will have to do something to retool the unemployment system itself. Maybe not new rates or things like that, but I think that you're going to see the Democrats are going to come up there and they're basically going to say, listen, we can have two kinds of sessions. We know you guys are going to steamroll us, but we can have 60 days with us just bitching about how bad the unemployment system is, with Anna Estimani and Jason Pizzo just railing about it, or we can do something about it. We'll do some reforms. And so maybe they'll throw them a bone and get some reforms to the unemployment system and connect and all that. And that way we don't have 60 days of floor speeches about it.
We do have a question about specific legislation, and I swear this is not from our friend Jim Rossica. Whiskey and Wheaties, is it going to happen? Are we going to be able to take down that wall?
Isn't it taking that? It's not down already. No, but you do bring up a good point. So clearly we relaxed a lot of rules and regulations during the pandemics when it came to a lot of different things. And we realized that the world didn't fall apart if you could, get your whiskey while you were shopping for your Wheaties. And, basically that's the rule that says that you have to have basically a separate building to go and buy alcohol because, kids are going to run in there and just start taking, Jello shots if you dare have a lane filled with alcohol. You can have all the beer and wine down there. But God forbid, you have a mixed drink in there. But I think you saw so much with the restaurants, being able to have, takeaway cocktails. You saw just all of those things. And so it's going to be some of those protectionist measures, whether they be the 3-tier system on beer and liquor, whether it be craft brewing, whether it be distilleries. I think some people are going to say, wait a second. What can we do to put more people back to work in this state, given all that's going on? How can we get out of the way of these things? And I think you're going to start I think some of that is just going to go away, and that could be on just a variety of different, regulations that had to have been lessened because of the pandemic. They're I just think we're going to see those, and I don't necessarily know what other ones there are, but there are certainly think about the fact they changed the rules on notaries where you can do, e-notaries. I did that all through the pandemic. I'm sure there are countless rules like that for the legal community, et cetera. I think we're going to see more telemedicine. We're going to see all those kind of things wait a second, people can't get together as much and maybe they shouldn't be. So how can we get out of the way of business?
Great. Let's start talking about 2022. The election is 732 days away.
Yeah.
So let's start with the gubernatorial race. What do you think DeSantis's chances are and for re-election? And let's talk about possible challengers, both from the Democrats and are there any within the party?
So DeSantis is primed right now. I mean, they're just, his approval rating is still going to be 45, 46%, but he's going to be one of the heir apparents to the Trump legacy if the president is not in office again. You saw that yesterday with Don Jr. tweeting out that the only person who wants to run in 2024 who's defending us is Ron DeSantis. So DeSantis is in great shape. In fact, I think one of the outcomes of Tuesday is, we had all these people who thought they were going to run against Ron DeSantis. And right now it's just I don't think anybody wants to run. Although let me offer this 10% theory. I think we could be in some French Revolution territory when it comes to the Trump legacy. I think we could see where if Trump is out and, and just imagine if Trump leaves relatively peacefully on January 20th, they're going to go after him. I mean, we can't underestimate how much a new attorney general is going to go after him, et cetera. Where I think, Deutsche Bank is calling in their loans, et cetera. He's going to be in really bad shape. People may want to continue the momentum about that. And they might go after who they perceived to be were enablers of Trump. And DeSantis is certainly, I don't want to say an enabler of Trump, but he has certainly positioned himself to be such a strong ally that, if we're in 2021, late 2021, and everybody's like, looking around like, man, how the hell did we allow those last 4 years to go down? And they want to start blaming people. You can't vote against Trump. You might be voting against some other people. So I think that is a 10% theory that that DeSantis has to keep in the back of his head. As for the Democrats, before Tuesday, you would have said Nikki Fried is the leading candidate for governor on the Democratic side. Right now, I think you have to say, will Nikki Fried be able to hang on being agriculture commissioner after 2022? I could see where she doesn't run, and then she runs for agriculture commissioner, and Wilton Simpson decides to run against her. She's not able to attract national money. Morgan's against her. She doesn't have the pot issue to run on. She's just another statewide Democrat at that point. And that's kind of the incentive for Nikki to run against DeSantis. It's actually harder for her to win agriculture commissioner with no money, no profile against a regular Republican than become the national darling against Trump's #1 governor. She'd be able to attract $50 million for that run. She's not going to be able to attract $50 for ag commissioner re-election.
Well, and like you said, if Wilton Simpson runs, she will be running against, as many or some of our attendees may or may not know, an actual farmer. I mean, he is
an egg farmer.
He's an egg farmer.
If you didn't know that, he'll be happy to tell you about how, he's out there every day, Jenna, like just working the chickens each morning. He's not the head of a $40 million company. He's out there, putting out seed. He's got his hat on, riding around. On that ranch.
Somebody's got to do it.
And then, I think the more interesting race is going to be the U.S. Senate race.
Okay.
I'll just be mean. Nobody really likes Marco Rubio. Not even in a bad way. Like Marco likes him, and there's some adherents that like Marco, but Marco's not a Trump guy. And, he's out tweeting Bible quotes today. He's not one of these like beloved Republican figures. He's not even like the Ted Cruz of Florida. He's Marco. And I gotta tell you, I just think that he is more vulnerable to a strong Democratic challenger. And again, that becomes a federal election. And I think so I think it's going to be somebody like, I don't know, like a Ted Deutsch or a Val Demings or Stephanie Murphy. I think they present a really strong challenge to him at that point. And I think that's going to be the more interesting, more competitive race in 2022.
2022 for us, for everyone, but legislatively important. We tend with Senator Passidomo down here.
Oh.
I think her name's Senator Passidomo. You might know of her. But
she better have tuned in at least for a minute today, or I'm going to be pissed. Did I say that out loud?
No. Do we see any changes in the legislature, and maybe going forward? In Lee County, Jenna Persons was just elected. Do we see any chances of maybe some more leadership roles from Southwest Florida?
I hope so. I think that there's a little bit of talk because you had so many Republicans in the House that just got elected, that they're talking about sticking together and, for the eventual, House speakership race. That's still probably going to be decided between Sam Garrison in Jacksonville or Northeast Florida and Jason Schoaf from the Panhandle. But the Southwest block there of all those freshmen they should be making a deal, or at least getting an appropriations chair out of somebody there would be the first thing. I'm trying to think of how the rest of the Senate, how the other Senate seats are going to go. Ray Rod is so well liked that part of the deal, just for the audience's edification, it's going to go Simpson, then obviously Kathleen Passidomo. Then there's the battle right now between it's Manny Diaz from South Florida versus Ben Albritton from an Orange Grove, and Manny may have that Senate District 37 recount matters a lot, because if Ileana Garcia gets in there, she is a pledge deep down. Nobody's going to say that out loud, but she's a pledge for Manny Diaz. I know that my friends on the other side would probably like Senator Albritton to kind of carry on, but that could change things up dramatically. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of deal making goes after that.
Mm-hmm. What do you expect? You're in the media biz. What changes do you expect to see? And when it comes to maybe bias, as we look to the next couple of elections, polling, I saw someone recently said they were no longer going to be posting links to any public polls or stories about polling. So what do you see that looking like as we get to 2022?
Jenna, I don't know about you, but I've had weekends where I go out Friday night, have a couple cocktails, go back out Saturday, have a few more cocktails. I go to brunch on Sunday, bang back, a half carafe of Bloody Marys. And then I wake up Monday and I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did all that. And I swear that I'm never going to do it again. And yet next Friday, I'm back to having cocktails. That's where today is Monday morning, basically, of the polling industry. Everybody's like, oh my God, I can't believe we did that. But by 2022, there are going to be candidates running in competitive primaries against each other, like for the Democratic nomination for U.S. Senate and governor. And they're going to have polling because they're going to want to know where they're at. They're going to want to know what their name ID is and issues. And they're going to see a poll that has them up 5 points over their opponent. And they need to get that out because they need to show that to Tallahassee, South Florida, and DC donors so that they can get money. And so they're gonna ping me. They're gonna say, hey, Peter, we've got this poll. And at that moment, I'm gonna go, do I want all of those sweet, sweet, sweet clicks that come with putting out a story about polling? Or do I want Politico to have them? And of course I'm gonna publish it. And all the readers out there are going to go, oh my God, there's a poll story. Stop whatever else you're reading about this deep dive about a policy issue. Let's go read about the horse race over there that tells us nothing. And so, yes, of course there will be polling, especially in primaries, which was exceptionally accurate. Primary polling was exceptionally accurate. Mm-hmm. Public or private polling was exceptionally accurate. The polling that sucks is university-based poll. I don't even know who these schools are. Where is Quinnipiac? I don't know, where is Monmouth? Do these teams have football, or these schools have football teams? You shouldn't be able to put out a poll unless you have a football team, is my rule going forward. I want to see Alabama University poll. I want to see Clemson poll. You have to be in the AP Top 25, you don't get to publish a poll. Because all they're doing is I don't even know if they have classes there. They just say they're a university. They're probably there's just one room with the pollsters in there. And those just stink. But, I think that I do, there were successful pollsters out there, again, the Trafalgar Group was successful. Ryan Tyson was successful. So people are going to want to know what were their methods. One of the things that people are doing, and I'm not getting into whether or not this is accurate or not, but everybody thinks that all the Trump voters are racist. And we know that they're not. And so, the Trump people were hanging up and not answering the calls, et cetera. There was the so-called shy Trump voter. So the way the Trafalgar Group and Ryan and all that, they went and they basically said, hey, Jenna, we don't care who you're voting for. Who's your neighbor voting for? And you're just like, oh, I heard he's voting for Trump. Which is, they didn't talk to their neighbor about that, but that was their way of getting rid of social distortion theory. And so there are ways to poll. We will be back to polling. This country is hooked on it. And if there's anything we know, this country is not very good at ending its addictions to things.
Yeah. As we wrap up, one last question. It's a fun one, I think, and it's a little bit of a turnabout. Peter, during the pandemic, had a podcast called Hunkered Down, And one of the questions he asked everyone, and I was lucky enough to be on his podcast, was what they were binging. So 2020 has been ridiculous. We've had a crazy election. What were you watching, listening to, or reading to get through both?
Hold on. Joe Biden is taking the lead in Pennsylvania. Just for
breaking news, guys.
Breaking news while I'm talking. So I have an 8-year-old. So a lot of times we're watching YouTube videos, which is like, we're watching YouTube videos of other people playing video games, which is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in my life. Like this Twitch thing and all that stuff. I'm like, Ella, go play the video game yourself. Why are you watching somebody else play the video game? That is the dumbest cultural phenomenon I've ever seen. So that's constantly on. So is Hamilton still. Like Ella dressed up as Peggy Schuyler in. I know. My wife right there, very excited about the Joe Biden thing. You'd never know that we were supporting Joe Biden except for the 25-foot banner on the back of our house. It's not on the front, it's on the back. And it's on there because we live on a canal. And of course, there's like 100 Trump voters. I would never put a sign up on my house, but I just wanted to troll the Trump voters. So I put it on the 3rd floor. Nobody can take it down. And you just see people like, they look at us because, you know, you're on the canal, everybody can look in and they look at us. They flick us the bird. It's amazing how we, it's not coming down for 4 years. And so I really like, seriously though, The Good Lord Bird on Showtime. I think it's kind of timely right now. It's about John Brown in the lead up to the Civil War. Not to get all serious, but there's a lot of people that think that even with Biden winning and all that, this is basically 1850 all over again, that we're entering the 1850s in the United States, that we haven't solved anything. And so you see this period in American, the lead up, bloody Kansas, etc. Ethan Hawke is fantastic in it. He's kind of over the top. I think that's probably the best show that I've watched. And I know that it's off right now, but I still think if people need to revisit it, especially with the movie that's coming out, it's another Western by him. But Kevin Costner in Yellowstone, that show is my favorite show that's been out over the last couple of years. It's a beautiful show. All the men wear these awesome, like, puffy vests with the Yellowstone Ranch logo. Like, I want to get one of those and wear those around the fall. And it's just like, it's basically a soap opera. It's a lot like Sons of Anarchy. It's by the same writer, Taylor Sheridan. A lot of killing, a lot of horses, a lot of cowboys and rodeos. And so I think it hits a lot of buttons for people.
Well, great. Well, we're going to all take those recommendations. And we thank you so much for coming and doing this via Zoom. We're hoping that in 2022, we can have you down to do it all over again in person. So thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it back over to Michael.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Peter, very much. Great job, as always. Really appreciate all your information. A lot of great insights there, and really appreciate the Florida focus and helping us to kind of get a preview of what we're going to be seeing going forward. And really appreciate it. Great information, and always very entertaining, and great to have you with us. So thank you. And thank you, Jenna. Great job on the interview. We appreciate that as well. So got a few announcements to make before we wrap up here. The first one is kind of a sad one here, but our Christmas party. We have made the tough decision that we're not going to be able to hold the Christmas party this year. That we worked real closely with the Hilton on that one there, and just weren't able to put it all together there. So unfortunately aren't going to be able to do that, but let's just use the term postpone. So we will hopefully do it again this coming December. So December of 2021. So just wanted to put that out there so that you're aware of that. Another one of the 65th annual Farm City Barbecue, that's going to be postponed until November 24th of 2021. Farm City Barbecue supports a number of youth programs, one of which is our Youth Leadership Collier program. And I know they're still doing their raffle. They're still selling tickets. Would encourage you to go on their website and try to figure out how to make that kind of contribution. If you can't, and you want to make a contribution towards Youth Leadership Collier, please just directly contact Amanda Bates in our office. she can help connect you and enable you to make a donation. So, and all our emails are our first names and then at napleschamber.org. So Amanda at napleschamber.org. So any contributions you want to make towards any of our leadership programs, we greatly appreciate it. And like I said earlier, today's Wake Up Naples was our final Wake Up Naples of 2020, and we'll be back in 2021. And as always, you can count on us to provide that kind of high quality insider information and help you to be able to do your work, do your business, and do it at the highest levels. So again, want to thank Chris Lopez and Tico Peoples Gas. Great job for helping us out there. Thank our series sponsors. As always, those guys do a great job for us to be able to help us to be able to put these on. So, and you're seeing all those sponsors there. Again, 2020 has been kind of a challenging year for everyone here. And we know that for many of our businesses and for our community, many people having to make tough decisions but are continuing forward. And we just want you to know that we're here for you. We're a resource. We have always been connectors. If there's questions, even if the questions are kind of like, hey, we need some help with trying to help some people with some financial issues they're dealing with or mental health issues they're dealing with, things like that, we can help connect you to those resources here in our community. So use us, use your membership, use us to be of help. There's just a lot of information that we can connect you to. We want to just kind of extend a gratitude to all of our businesses, all of our members for all the support. Many of you have really hung in there with us. We appreciate your support through all the pandemic. It's not over yet. We're still plowing forward. We got a lot of work to do. And again, we just want to be seen as a resource and be a help to you in any way that we can be. So again, thanks to all the staff that help make all these events happen. Thanks to all of our sponsors. And we really want to keep going through this holiday season, be positive, be upbeat. Let's pray and hope for a great 2021, and we'll start kicking off that here pretty soon. So